Okay, we are now recording. This is the regular meeting of the Valley Green Energy Working Group, and we're joined today by Paul Gromer of Mass Power Choice. The first agenda item is to review the minutes from the last meeting, which was in October. Unfortunately, I don't have those minutes, so I'll get to them next time. I do want to say that this meeting, I have a hard stop at 2 o'clock. I apologize, but I have another meeting that starts right at 2, so I'll have to stop like a minute or two before 2. Um, the next agenda item is any public comment, and I don't believe we have any public. So with that, I'm going to move us along just in the interest of time. So Paul, I'm going to jump right to you and hand it over for you to give us some updates and some thoughts.
Yes, excellent. So thank you, Stephanie. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk to everyone today. I wanted to talk to you about an issue that's come up regarding the impact of buying additional Class 1 RECs for the program, as you have been doing. So to give you plenty of time to think about that before your next contract procurement, which will be coming up the next few months. And as background, largely the impacts of the Trump administration on renewable energy have reduced the impact of buying additional Class 1 RECs and is causing a number of cities and towns to rethink whether it continues to make sense to continue to buy them as part of their aggregation offerings. And in particular, or as an example, and they may have been the first, Newton, who's been a real leader in the amount of additional Class 1 RECs they've been buying, has decided with their new contract that just starts up right now, no longer to buy Class 1 RECs. And so they're only offering what would be the equivalent of your basic product now. And to give you a minute or two, maybe take a little bit longer just to talk it through. So I'd say there are two reasons that cities and towns buy additional Class 1 RECs. One reason is that simply to change the environmental impact of the electricity customers are using. So it's really not about changing the world. It's about using green energy yourself. And that effect hasn't really changed. What has changed, though, is the other reason for buying the additional Class 1 RECs, which is the primary one for most folks, I'd say, and that's the additionality benefit, the belief that by buying additional Class 1 RECs, you're causing additional renewable energy to be added to the grid. That's what's been undermined by the actions of the Trump administration. So to understand why, and just give a little more background, the buying additional Class 1 RECs really works in tandem with the state renewable portfolio standard. Both of them create additionality by creating a market pull for new renewable energy projects. It says by they increase the demand, and the belief is that by increasing demand will cause new projects to be built. The RPS does that to a certain level set by the state, and then additional voluntary purchases are over and above that. So for additional voluntary purchases to create a demand which causes new projects to be built, it has to be possible that projects are being built to satisfy the RPS and that even more projects could be built to satisfy the additional demand created by these voluntary purchases. Unfortunately, largely because of Trump's war on wind, but also attacks on solar and everything else, we're in a situation now where there aren't enough RECs to satisfy the RPS. We're in a shortage. And it's expected that that shortage will continue for 5 years, maybe even longer, because, and it's not just about the projects, the wind projects that are nearly built that are under attack, even assuming those do get built. Development of new projects has halted, and the RPS requirements were, sort of set or satisfying those would have required those new projects to come online, and they're not going to, or they're going to be substantially delayed. So in a time of REC shortage, buying additional Class 1 RECs doesn't cause additional renewable energy to be built. As the voluntary purchaser, you get the RECs for sure, but what that means is that there are fewer RECs available for RPS compliance. And the alternative for compliance is that retail suppliers can pay what's called the ACP, the alternative compliance payment. So at times of shortage, rec shortage, buying additional class one recs doesn't cause new renewable energy. It causes more ACP payments. So a first question you'd want to ask is, do you want the participants in your program to pay extra when the effect of that is more ACP payments, which is more money to a state agency, the Mass Clean Energy Center? That's the first question. The second thing, though, is how that ACP money is being used. It was supposed to be used to support clean energy projects. So you could think, well, we're not causing new projects the way we thought, but money's going to clean energy as a result of what we're doing. So that's still a good thing. We still want to support that. But what the state has been doing with those ACP funds is they're using them to fund rate discounts for customers across the state. Back in March, the state took $150 million in ACP money and used that to fund a $50 rate credit for everybody across the state. And according to today's Globe, the governor just is about to announce that she's going to take another 180 million in ACP money and do that again. So I hate to say it, but the impact of buying additional class one recs is your program participants are paying more to fund a rate discount for citizens across the state. So you may want to think about whether you want to continue to do it. Now, there would be reason to continue to do it anyway. One would be the first thing I mentioned, continuing to buy clean energy for the program, not trying to change the world, but saying we want to use clean energy, not the alternative. Some people would think that. Other people might think, well, we just want to stay the course, we're going to continue doing what we're doing and we're going to hope this gets solved, but we're going to continue on the course that we're on. But others, like Newton, for example, chose not to do that. Your alternatives, I'll shut up in a second, but your alternatives would be you could just do nothing else different. You continue to do the same thing you're doing now. One. Two, you could just stop buying the additional class one recs, which would mean your price would be lower. And you could say, well, we'll start again once that has an impact again, but right now it doesn't. So we're not going to continue doing it. Or the third thing you could do is you could focus more on sort of direct support for renewable energy, things you can control. And that's definitely what's under consideration in Newton. So you already have and the way that would work is you take a fee through the program and you could use those funds to support renewable energy more directly. That's much more challenging than buying the RECs, but in this world would be much more impactful. And you could do that with your existing fee, or you could think, well, we're going to take some or all of the increase in costs that we were using for RECs, and we're going to make our fee bigger and then have more money to use to support clean energy. You could leave the fee where it is. Those, I think, are the options. So that was a long yak by me. So I'll pause now and for discussion or comments.
Well, I'll start, Paul, because we here in Pelham, and I think we're not unique in this, are beginning to experience the first rumbles of, if you will, a taxpayer revolt. But it's happening everywhere where, we're facing an override 2 years from now. So there's all kinds of places and so on. I'm really sensitive to the costs that residents are experiencing on a number of different levels. One of them, of course, is taxes, which we can do something about if we want to cut things. But the other is right here. And we happen to be a community aggregation. And so we're making decisions like the ones you're just describing, Paul, that could have the impact of increasing costs for people or decreasing costs for people. And given that there doesn't seem to be much of an upside to increasing costs for people based on what you said, I'm there, man. I mean, I say we don't, we go the way Newton is going. That would be my vote at this point in time based upon what I've just learned.
I have a quick question. Sorry, Ben, I just
No,
because
go,
I
go.
with it. So My question is, if we go this route where we don't do the additional class one recs, then does that reduce our options to the basic or 100%?
Um, so
Or
you'd
would
have
we not
some,
even do the 100%? Sorry, I'm
right,
just wondering, like, what does that mean? Do we just go to one rate?
right. So I think you'd have a choice to make there, and I could see two choices that would be, legitimate ones. One, you could say, well, we're not going to put additional class one recs in the standard product anymore. So standard and basic get combined, but we're still going to make available a 100% optional product for people who choose to buy it. So that would be one way to go. I think that's an attractive option. What Newton decided to do was they said, we're just going to have one option with no additional class one recs. And their thinking was, if we don't think buying additional class one recs is impactful, we're not going to offer a product with those recs in it. And if people want to find a way to buy them, they can find some other way. But if the city doesn't believe in this offering, we're not going to make this offering. That's what Newton did. Newton was should have mentioned before, they were nervous. Maybe they'd get some blowback from the environmental community, and Newton remains very committed to supporting clean energy. They just didn't feel like this strategy was working and decided not to stop. But they really haven't gotten blowback from it, which was, I mean, good, I suppose, but a little surprised them a bit. But sorry, your two choices would be continue to offer the 100% as an option, or no, and just have a single product you could choose.
Okay. Ben and then Darcy. Go ahead, Ben.
So I'm definitely with Bob on this in that well, I'll be honest, I don't believe that it's just an accounting fiction when you say, oh, I've got these recs and therefore I've got cleaner energy. You don't. It's because you're just participating in a market. And even when we started this, I guess when we started this before the Trump administration, at that time, the rec market was not really providing much additionality because it wasn't kind of the critical thing. So it was kind of a free rider benefit for developers. So it really wasn't getting you any additionality either because there were other just bigger forces that were the deciding factors. So, in my evaluation was like recs shouldn't be part of the discussion. We just shouldn't do it. So it is more than fine with me to just say, let's simplify it, offer basic. The cheaper people's electricity is, the more comfortable they will be with electrifying their services. So it's actually by getting people lower cost electricity and making it easy for them, that's kind of the best thing that this aggregation can do, in my opinion. So I would go for simple and basic and eliminate recs, potentially reconsider them later. And this is something I was actually hoping that Paul would be here, because I know that, Paul, you have also been in discussion in a very prospective way with Power Options about some ways that we might use community choice aggregations to do some interesting things. And I've been discussing with them as well as ways that we could use it, whether it was an actual option, like an opt-in option that would help finance or essentially provide committed purchasing from a solar development. Maybe it would be like a utility scale front of the meter development, with the idea that there would be some transfer of benefits to low income people on low income rate within our aggregation. So kind of getting these two benefits out of it as an opt-in thing. And then even more tenuous out there is the idea of a virtual power plant, where it's really, I mean, the aggregation isn't necessary, but it's kind of a list of potential participants. So I think there are a lot of really cool things we can do, especially if we don't encourage people to waste money on recs.
And I, just for the record, I similarly feel like we should not continue with the recs. I agree that I don't think there's a benefit at this point, and I agree that we could always go back to the potential purchase in the future should things change. Darcy, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm interested in knowing, you said, Paul, that Newton was talking about some more direct way of using funds to get clean energy. And so I'm interested in finding out about that. And also, we have this somewhat fictional local option, fourth option that we have in our plan that isn't being used right now. And I'm just thinking, what can we do along the lines of innovative programs to get some local energy, source our energy right here in our area
Mhm.
by using that local option. And how could that be done? I agree that Recs are not that good. But I love the idea of somehow pooling our funds to build locally sourced energy.
Yeah, so those are great questions, and I mean, big picture, I'd say I 100% agree with sort of the premise behind it, which is that although this option that the program has been using to support clean energy is no longer as useful as it was, clean energy needs support now more than ever, right? So great, and there's a greater need than ever to find some ways to help it through the program, but we need to find another way to do it. Other ways are more challenging. Newton is looking at a few things. One model they're looking at, but there are obstacles to it, is to do what the city of Cambridge has done, where what Cambridge does is they collect a fee through their program, and they've used the funds from that to make a direct contract with two renewable energy projects before they were built, where the city's commitment, long-term purchase commitment for the output of those projects, both the RECs and the energy, was instrumental in getting the projects financed and built. So they could say, well, our commitment caused those projects, so they get the real renewable energy benefit from it. The reason that's challenging is typically renewable energy developers need a lengthy contract, 15 years or so. And that's difficult for an aggregation program because, of course, your program really only lives for the term of the supply contract. You expect to renew it, but things can change in the future always. And that's a 2 or 3 year commitment. So how do you match those two things together? So Cambridge, being Cambridge, they were willing to sign on for the 15 years, and it's the city that's at risk. But few municipalities would be willing to do that, and Newton's not one of them. So they're looking at other ways that, trying to see if they can solve that. There is another model where the town of Nantucket uses their fund to support residential solar, and they give out essentially a rebate of a few $1,000s to residents of Nantucket who are going to build install solar on their homes. And so that's not a long-term commitment. It's a one at a time kind of commitment. So they can take the funds they bring in each year and then pay them out each year. And of course, when I say this, it's Nantucket, the natural reaction is, well, Nantucket, but they do have some restrictions around the program. It's only available to permanent residents. It's not available to the billionaires who have their summer homes there. So they're trying to help the full-time islanders rather than everybody else. Those are just two examples. I think a lot of cities and towns are going to be thinking harder about what they can do, and certainly focusing more on local projects has a great deal of appeal.
Thanks, Paul. Andrea?
The Cambridge projects are not local.
Correct. They're not. In fact, they're very much not local. They're in North Dakota and Illinois, I think.
Do you think that we'd have a lot of barriers to doing that kind of project locally, even if we got over the
Um,
15-year contract.
yeah, so the 15-year term it would be the obstacle. So a challenge is how to find a way to make a commitment that's more manageable for the program. It's of a term that's manageable for the program and still have it be useful for the developer. So I'm personally, the sort of thing I'm trying to think through is, can we convert what's an annual revenue stream for only a few years into a commitment of just that, like a pot of money as a commitment to a project, as opposed to a multi-year purchase commitment, which is more the standard in the industry. We'll buy from you every year for the next 15 years. Instead, I think what would be much more manageable for aggregations is, we know we're going to have this much money in 3 years or 2 years, so we're willing to commit that amount of money, but not make a promise about the future. So you can't support as big a project that way. You might need commitments from more towns, but I think that's one way of solving the term problem. And it might work better too. I mean, if we were looking at local projects, which I'm assuming might be, at least in some cases, smaller than the big utility scale projects that Cambridge supported, maybe we could find a match between project size and the amount of funds that the program had available.
As Ben said, is a virtual power plant, is that something that involves, paying people to join, like
No, but there would be
connected
a different rate.
solutions? Eversource gives me $20 a year or something.
No, virtual power plant is much, much more than that. And the reason I said like a little far-fetched is because like it will take a lot to get there. It's essentially a software solution, but instead of paying you a lump sum to participate a few times a year at most, this ideally would incorporate multiple devices, so water heaters, EV chargers, thermostats, and batteries, right? And then being essentially letting a third party entity control those devices within certain parameters to reduce demand, or in the case of batteries, actually, and cars, if it's available, discharge energy to the grid, right? So they exist, and there are different kind of grades of them, but this would the concept that I was discussing with power options, again, concepts of a plan, if you will, is
like Greenland.
Yeah, or Iceland, whichever. The concept is that you would kind of have this opt-in tier, just like we have the opt-in to 100%. You'd have this opt-in tier where the company so First Point or whoever would agree that part of their energy resource would be from this virtual power plant. And that you should actually get in, when you opt in, you actually should probably get a lower rate because it should actually cost less, right? You're participating in this thing by some small amount. Like I said, concepts of a plan. So, but I feel like now is the time to start thinking about, how do you put together these potential participants? What protocols do you use? What broker? Because there are concepts of like creating online markets for electricity that VPPs and any other energy resource can participate in. And all of this stuff is kind of under development. Some of it needs changes at the DPU to really work. So it's nothing in the near term, but potentially very, very huge, right? So, but yeah, it's way more than like a connected solutions thing. But that's the concept.
And I'm not a fan of RECs, so I would be in favor of dropping the 100% renewable option in favor of substituting something that, if we're allowed to, collect the money for some project that is going to increase clean energy or decrease fossil fuels.
Oh, can I?
Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead, Ben.
This it's just because we have Paul. So one of the questions Power Options guys asked me is, okay, how much money would you have available? Because they just want to run a model to say, okay, like just like how much could you support? And so one question is kind of like, how much money do we have available now, or would we have available in a year or whatever? And what would be the effect of adding another mill to that? Is there a way to get that information, just so they can just run a scenario?
I only just recently, this would be part of my updates, but I only just recently had access to um, some numbers. And I think, first of all, I wasn't even sure that we were getting all three communities adders funds, but we are. So Amherst has them in an account. Um, so I don't typically get monthly statements or anything. I only just got one recently, but I was told like roughly it looks like it's around like 150,000 a year-ish, which is I think what we calculated from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to say, my concern with all of this always is that it's not really a lot. The heat pump program that we're doing in Amherst right now for 2 years, and I know that's partly because we are also working with CET, but that program was $385,000 that we committed. So, and it's a 2-year program because there's so much staffing that's involved as well in terms of doing the community outreach. That's real. And holding people's hands through the process, all of that takes time. So I just think we need to sort of keep some of those things in perspective too. I'm going to go to Bob and then I'll go to you, Adele.
Thanks, Stephanie. I'm intrigued by the option that is very, very local and very targeted to our users, our people, our residents. And that idea, Paul, you had described as subsidizing installations of PV in people's homes. I'm actually now, my son doesn't live here, he lives in the Hudson River Valley, and I'm trying to do some research for him about a PV installation at their house. And it's daunting, to do that, even to find like who's a reputable company to bring in, et cetera, but also to subsidize that in a way. I guess I'm really intrigued by the idea of our community aggregation system staying really local, really focused on our users. And if there's a way that we can do that, and I could see us raising that mill, Ben, if we're going to reduce the cost because we're not going to do the RECs and we're going to go with one single rate. I think anyway, let's say we do that. That means that, the cost is likely to come down. And so if we add a mill and take that 150,000 and, I don't know what one mill adds to that, but, then what would that leave us in order to help people locally to essentially further reduce their electric bills and to do it in a way that's completely green? Anyway.
Mhm.
Adele, go ahead.
I have a clarifying question. When you mentioned $150,000 per year, did that include only Amherst?
No, that's all three.
Okay. Well, then I would support Andrew's solution proposal to gather the funds for several years to build something meaningful about renewable energy.
Okay, Ben?
Well, I don't know how we're going to define meaningful, but I think that Bob's, or, I mean, Paul brought it up, but the idea of focusing on local rooftop solar, or mostly rooftop, I'm sure there could be, but just local uh, subsidies, I think would be good, particularly if we can use a sense, again, the list, use the fact that we have hopefully built some credibility, et cetera, with the community to basically do what Solarize did, but more aggressively. So like PV is something like $2 to $3 a watt here. In Australia, it's like 60 cents. And most of that cost is the cost of is basically split between the cost of marketing and the cost of permitting, you know? And so if we can drop the cost by taking away a big portion of the marketing, having and like Bob was talking about, like it's hard to find the right one. Well, if we at least locally have pre-selected in the same way, I've got to say now that I'm in government and I've got power options that we're a member of, and it's like they've pre-negotiated contracts for us that makes life easier, and we can do things faster. So, to the degree that we can have like pre-approved vendors, pre-vetted sites, like so that we use we use more, and then I would say sure subsidy, but maybe some sort of revolving fund component to it as well, so that like the subsidy buys down the cost and we help you get it cheaper. This is all theoretical, right? But but then, as it starts paying for itself, you start paying back some portion that allows your neighbor to access the funds. Because okay, so if we put in another mill, that gets us to 300K a year, which still doesn't go very far.
Yeah,
Um,
I
you know,
agree. I want to jump into because I'm having sort of similar thoughts, and I really agree with both Ben and Bob 100%. I think we keep talking about sort of a larger scale renewable energy development, but really, I think where we need to be focusing on is residential. For every home that we have, there's the potential for solar or for some kind of commitment to transitioning off fossil fuels. So I think we need to focus that. I'm finding that with the heat pump program, um, I'm feeling like there's definitely more and more interest. And I think what I'm finding is that people right now, especially in Amherst, there's growing interest for some folks because of our additional incentive. Like we have a testimonial from someone who installed heat pumps and said, until that additional $3,500, which quite frankly does not seem like a lot, but it made the difference between them being able to do this transition versus not. So I also agree that I think we need to sort of focus on local projects. Um, heat pump installation, solar installation. Some folks could have the capacity to do, some kind of ground source heat pump or geothermal. Let's look into that as well. Like, I feel like those are the things we should be doing more locally and get away from the idea of sort of trying to do some kind of large scale projects. Also, because they are becoming increasingly more controversial, especially when they have battery storage associated with them. They are getting very, very controversial and people are really pushing back. So I think, again, focusing on, residential and what we can do to support people and to bring the electricity costs down, really key. Andrea, go ahead.
Batteries, we have to help people get over that.
I
We
agree.
need batteries. So, this is a local aggregation. We should be in a position to influence people's beliefs about it. So I'm not opposed to, helping people get heat pumps and rooftop solar, as long as we can structure it in a way that distributes it across income levels. And that becomes really difficult, especially in Amherst, where, what, 50% of our population are renters. So how do we do that? I don't, I mean, I feel like community solar is just another version of a market, participating in a market, but maybe there's a way to do it where, it benefits everyone by having our towns, anchor installation, something like that.
So this is precisely what I've been discussing with Power Options, is some way it would be voluntary that you could get yourself a benefit of lower cost electricity, like community solar of some sort, but essentially voluntarily, like part of the deal. Like, so when I do community solar, right, I'm paying, let's say I'm getting paid, or I'm getting credit for 70 cents on the dollar. And I might agree, I'm going to get 80 cents on a dollar because 10 cents is just going to go to somebody on the low income rate within our VGE, or whatever the percentage is. But, like, essentially, so one way that could actually combine with this idea of Bob's talking about with local rooftop solar, for example, if we were to subsidize that, is to say, well, part of the deal to get this subsidy that gets PV on your roof is, you size it for the local transformer capacity, or the local distribution capacity, and the Schedule Z. There's a certain portion of production that is going to Schedule Z to all the bills that are low income bills in VGE, and or some structure like that where you're actually using those. So it is like community solar, but you're actually putting it on people's roofs, and it's just part of the contract to get the subsidy. Because
Thanks.
of course, I'm sorry, the more we build solar, the fewer mills we're going to get in, right? If it's behind the meter, right? So the more we add heat pumps, the more revenue we get. But actually, as we add PV and batteries, we reduce our.
I think the
Tom,
overall move towards electrification, hopefully we can cover it, Ben. But I agree with you on the trajectory of that math. I mean, I also, in regard to, why is solar so expensive? And you mentioned permitting. I totally agree. There's actually something that I don't know if the towns on this call use or have heard of Solar App, but it streamlines the approval process. Like, Paul, I'm sure, can add to it. And I'll also say that in the context of what's been happening with the one big budget busting bill, there has been a response from the financial sector, and there's it mostly, most of the solar incentives did not get touched. There's a 2-year run ramp on the third-party owned stuff. You can safe harbor until 2030. The only thing they hurt was the homeowner with the 25D tax credit. And there are now prepaid leases and prepaid PPAs available. They're coming out slowly that can address a lot of the affordability issues on the cost of the system. If we can improve the permitting, I think that gets us far down the road.
Paul?
So thanks, Stephanie. I wanted to raise one other point, and I'll say I wasn't going to bring this up, but given the level of enthusiasm for making a change, I will. So I've framed this question as a decision for your next contract, which would start roughly a year from now, and it's certainly that. Potentially, there would be the opportunity to change the program now if you want it. So the way that would work is, I'd have to confirm, but I have a high degree of confidence that if we went to the supplier and say, we don't want those extra recs anymore, they would just discount the price back to the basic price. So you could have that savings for customers, or maybe have a combination of a little price reduction and an increase in the fees, so you have more money coming in. I'm nearly certain, but would have to confirm the supplier would agree to that. The issue would be for the town, you've presented the project as having these options and said these are going to be your options for the next 2 years. So you'd be changing the program midstream. You may not want to do that because you said it's going to be this way for 2 years, and you just might want to just stick with that. And I think that's what most communities would do. I do, though, think there would be an option to consider where you did two things. One is you would, of course, need to inform customers. So everybody would get a letter saying, we're changing the program and this is why. And so we're going to change what we've been offering for you. And if you don't want to be in the program anymore, you're free to leave the program. That would be one thing. I would also consider keeping a product just like the standard, so with the 10%, as an option, making it an optional product. So you'd send a letter to folks that said, it's been 10% extra renewables. We're going to change that to 0 renewables for these reasons, and the prices can change to this. But if you want to keep what you have now, just let us know, and we'll keep you on where you are now. So make what's now the standard an option. You probably wouldn't have that as an option in your new contract, but just as a way of making changing midstream sort of more palatable and more consumer friendly, where if anybody wants to stay with what they've got, they would have the option to do that. So I wanted to raise that. It's not what most people would do, I don't think, but given what seems to be the strong feelings about this, I wanted to present it as something for you to consider.
Personally, I'm reluctant to change midstream. We have one more year, and I don't know that it would make a huge difference. And I think in terms of community confidence, I think we'd be best to just sort of stay the course for the year and then next time. Because if we are, I mean, it's likely that we'll change it in the next offering. So I say it gives us also that time to build up the opportunities to inform the public about the change that's coming in the following year. Ben, go ahead.
Interesting. So of course I'm like, yeah, let's change midstream, partly because I've found that any kind of new announcements about VGE is a really nice hook to just communicate with people. And so like what's my hook? How do I get people out? VGE was its rollout was a good way of getting people out. Now that's because I want to do that, right? I want to do more engagement. And have difficulty with it. I think, Stephanie, you do so much that you may not have the bandwidth to add it. But I see it as, one, politically very appealing at this time when everyone's worried about energy costs, to say, we're not going to do stupid things just because we started out one way. As the world changed, we're going to change with it, and we're going to explain to you why we changed, which gets people talking about it and thinking about it, and it demonstrates that we are looking out for them, right? At least that's the way I would try to sell it politically, right? Is that this is us looking out for you, and again, a chance to talk about other energy stuff. It just generally gets people in, and to maybe prepare the way. Because we're in my case, I would want to do lots of PR or lots of outreach, prepare the way for the change that's coming. So I like Paul's option, which is to say, if you do nothing, you just get cheaper electricity, and here's why. But if you just really, you opted for 100%, whatever it is, and you just want to keep that, you can do that. Just go to the website and select the new opt up or whatever you call it.
Bob?
So forgive my ignorance here for a moment. So currently, if someone has chosen one of our 3 options, can they change that at any time? Okay. So rather than us changing our program midstream, we could do the outreach that you're describing, Ben. We could explain what's going on and how recs are simply not, et cetera, all of this stuff. And we can say to people, if you want, you can switch to X or Y, et cetera. In other words, leave it to the people. We get the benefit of the outreach, the education, the we're looking out for you. Now you decide, user, customer, what you want to do, and we leave it to you. If I receive that, I mean, I don't pay because I have PV, but if I received it, I'd probably drop to the bottom tier. Um, you know, but I think it's a way for us to say, we're looking out for you. Here you go. Anyway.
Bob, I'm trying to understand though, when you say that, so I'm just sort of confused as to what we're thinking. Because you said don't change midstream
Right.
and leave it up to the customer, let the
Program.
customer. But so basically, we're just informing people right now that over the course of this year, this is their options. But then we are going to likely
Yes.
change those options for the
Yes.
next iteration, like a year from now.
And we could let them know that we're going to continue our due diligence,
Right.
for the new contract. But given what's going on right now, we're giving you information that will allow you to make a choice right now in our program, because of what's happening. And so, yeah.
So how complicated, I have to ask Paul, how complicated will that be in terms of like the outreach and how people would go about choosing to stay, choosing to not, choosing to switch? Like how disruptive, and will First Point be able to sort of easily adjust to those changes?
Yes, so First Point would very easily be able to adjust to customers switching from one product to another. It would be they're set up to do that. Switching from one to another is pretty simple for the customer. You can go to the website and there's a form you need to fill out. It's a little bit of a pain in the neck because we need a bunch of utility numbers, the two different account numbers in order to process the change. So but it's a web form to fill out, or there's a number of folks can call and they'll speak to someone in my office who will help them through it and take the information from them. So that's easy to do. And as I understand Bob's idea, it would just be sending a letter that says, the world has changed. Here's why. Our program's this for the next 9 months, but you have an option within it. And if you'd like to opt down because of these changes, here's how to do it.
It won't be more, I have to be clear. It won't be just a letter. We'll have to do a much more concerted effort with outreach because I'm thinking about, the fact that we have people who are more senior who have been very confused about the program just from the beginning. I think, we also have community members that are low income. We have language disparity. I just feel like we're going to have to really, it's going to be a lot. Like, I think we're going to have to do a lot of information and hand-holding through allowing people to have the option. I mean, I think the letter is sort of a part of it, but I think I feel like we almost need to start doing the outreach the way we did with launching the whole program ahead of the letter going out so that people know something's coming. So that's my only concern. It's just, I think there's going to need to be a lot to let people know. Andra and then Darcy. And I'm sorry, we've got only 10 minutes left. So Darcy.
I'm actually in favor of making the decision for the consumers. That is what we're asking them to let us do. We're introducing this idea of community choice, not individual choice so much, although you can. That's always been true. It's still true. But why would we let go of that building trust that we've been talking about by keeping the program as it is, rather than saying, oh, we're making it cheaper for you because we're looking out for you. And that's how this community choice aggregation thing works.
Well, we said, I will say though, you know, we're talking a lot about pricing, but originally when we were launching this, we were saying cost wasn't the driver. It was very specifically about, you know, climate. So I kind of feel like we just have to be clear, you know, consistent with our messaging too about what's important with all of this. Darcy, go ahead.
Yeah, I just am wondering if we would be kind of shooting ourselves in the foot um, to start off by having people transition right now. And then if in the meantime we decide we want to do something and we want to like add a mill, and that would have otherwise not have affected the person. In other words, they will notice it. I guess I'm trying to be sneaky here. The customers will notice it if a year from now, when we have a new contract, that their prices go up because we've decided we wanted to add a mill for doing a project. Whereas if we do it ahead of time and they opt down, then they'll be unhappy when they have an increase. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But they're gonna
So
have an increase
I'm
anyway.
just looking ahead, sort of like trying to make it easy for us to do the projects that we want to do and have enough money to do it. Um, so yeah, and I also feel like in our education, if we do this midstream or whenever, that we not only want to explain that we're helping them save money, but what we're planning to do on the climate side to make up for it. Um, because many of them will want to know that, you know, they won't want to just drop their climate advocacy. They want to hear what we're doing as an alternative. I'm assuming that a lot of people will. Not everybody, obviously.
I think the average, for the most part, most people are interested in price. They care about climate, but right now, especially, they're interested in price. I think if we can make opportunities for people to transition into, you know, add more electrification, heat pumps, you know, and programs and incentives that will do that in the future. I mean, personally, I mean, I hear what everyone's saying about sort of trying to transition now or giving people the option now. I still think it makes more sense to sort of stay the course now with where people are and take this time now and start now with sort of transitioning into what we are going to offer in the next iteration. And I don't think we've decided whether that's to add another mill or, you know, how it's going to affect our renewable. How are we going to address that? I don't think we've decided. And I think we also need to talk to the executives in our community about that option too. So I can't even really just sort of say, you know, this is what we're going to do because we need to sort of discuss it with our executives. Ben?
So, I guess I'm still kind of on the Bob train here. Um, uh, Giving people a choice, explaining it to them. You only have to do as much outreach as you want to do. You can lead a horse to water, etc. Right? If people don't know about it, they don't open the letter, whatever it is, that's fine. But I also think like right now, the rec purchases are kind of doing more harm than good. So reducing about a year of unnecessary and harmful rec purchases, why would we not at least give the customers a chance to not do that? And So I could see that, or I could also see Andra's idea of just like, now just do it. Because in either case, they're not helpful in explaining that. And then people get a surprise lower bill. That's fine. I think if we do or do not add one additional mill, that's not going to be the thing that's going to surprise them. It's going to be whatever the new negotiated price is, that's going to be A, probably higher, and B, still judged in comparison to the base rate from the utility. So I don't think that's going to be like the deciding factor, or that like people will notice because it'll be a new price.
Bob?
So Andra's argument was convincing for me when she made it. We are a community aggregation, and we are making choices for people in a way. We're giving them options, but we're making choices. And I think that the issue here is if we gave people the option, which is what I was talking about before, as Paul explained, then there are steps that people have to take. And then there are questions, and then there are phone calls, and then there's confusion, and then there's blah, 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 blah. Whereas we get the same bang for the buck, frankly, in terms of outreach. If we send a letter to people and say, the world has changed, here's what's going on, here's what we have done, and everybody now is on the base rate. And that's the end of the story. And then nobody has to go to a website, or I don't think, I don't exactly know how that would work, Paul. But if that were possible, then we as an aggregation, as a community, are making a decision that we feel is in the best interest, not only of our customers, but even right now in terms of benefits for the environment.
So I like that. So you're saying, so again, and Andrew, I want to be clear. You're saying do that now before the next. Okay. And okay. And then the next time we negotiate, we still have the potential then to, add another mill at that point, which is going to obviously raise the prices again. Which, to Darcy's point, I don't know. It'll be what it'll be. People will definitely have some feelings, I'm sure. I think there's just a lot of sensitivity around cost right now. Adele?
I don't know why people seem to be saying that the current situation is so dreadful, because it's going, even with Governor Healy's latest projection, it's going to lower the bills for the low-income people. That's not a dreadful proposition in my book.
I agree. I agree with you, Adele. Okay.
It's also raising the price, right? If you're buying up RECs and then somebody has to pay a compliance price, that raises the price for everyone.
Okay. Darcy?
Yeah, I know you're jumping off the meeting, and I just wanted to make sure you reported about anything news on the JPE before you go.
I will. I'm about to. I just wanted to say, so Paul, thank you so much. This has been a really interesting conversation, and I don't know if you're willing, but if our next meeting is February 19th, I think we're probably going to have to sort of discuss this all, a bit more. I think we're also needing to check in with our executives, because I don't think we could make this kind of change. I can't make it on my own or on our own. We can certainly make a recommendation, but ultimately I think our executives in our communities will need to decide. So Paul, thank you. We may reach out to you again for February 19th, if that's okay.
That's great. And so I'll hop off. Thanks for the opportunity. I just wanted to say one clarifying point. I think if you make the change now and go with the default as the economy, I think at a minimum, though, you'd need to keep the 100% green for now, because you have people who affirmatively chose that. So I think you'd want to honor those. And then, as I said before, my recommendation, but not required, is maybe you make a 10% green option if people want it as an easier transition. So I'll be quiet now. I'll let you go on with the rest of everything. Happy to come back and great to see everyone.
Okay, thank you
care.
so much.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, so really quick, so as you know, and I told you all this was the case, we didn't have a finance director, and it was important to have a finance director back in place. It took some time. He didn't really, he came, I think, in like the end of October or November, but had a lot that he was dealing with when he first came. So we've only recently been able to engage about the JPE. We did send it to the procurement officer. We have a budget. Unfortunately, we can't base the RFP and putting out the RFP or the RFQ based on price. It has to be based on what the cost of services are. This is a little complicated, but in any case, right now we are reaching out to companies to find out what the estimated cost of developing the business plan would be. And once we sort of have that, then we can send it out. The other complication is our procurement officer is leaving. So it won't stop us from doing that. I mean, we still have the ability internally to get the RFP out and do all that. It's just that we won't have her in her role, which might slow things down a little more once again. So we're in process of trying to figure this out. I had a meeting with someone from Synapse this morning about finding the names of some potential companies, organizations that could develop the business plan. So just letting you know, and it's challenging. There's, a lot of people sort of deal with the financial aspects of this kind of thing. But I think it's a little more complicated. So we haven't found like a really good fit, but I just have to outreach to people and see who will respond. So anyway, that's where that sits. We're trying to move it forward. That's my update. So our next meeting is February 19th. At 1 o'clock. Thank you all so much. This was a really great conversation today. I thought so. I hope you all did too. And I think we'll just pick it up on the 19th and see where give us time to sort of think about all this. And this meeting is recorded. So if you need to go back, go to the Town of Amherst YouTube page, find the meeting. If you need to sort of listen back on the conversation, I think that might be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you all so much.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks,
Right.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.